Strangeness podcast, episode 14. So, that's right, the title of the video for the podcast, Blast of Strangeness, episode 14. So, the setup. So, all you really need is a mic like this one in particular for cheap, which you can get for really dirt cheap. All you need is a phone, like your smartphone, your iPhone or whatever, a computer, and hold on just 1 second. I'll show you what else you'll need. You also need, hold on, hang on just 1 second here. You'll also need a light like mine, which you can get for dirt cheap. Just 1 second here. Show you one other thing you can also will need if you want to start a podcast, depending on your space. You can use one of these. See, you can use one of these things here if you need one for your podcast. Okay, so you can also, for your podcast, you can actually use a folding table, and you could also use a folding camping chair, which all the stuff you could get for fairly dirt cheap, literally. Hold on 1 second, I have something else to show you. You can also use a computer like this one for your setup. If you want to start your own podcast, all you would need is all the stuff I just showed you, such as a mic like mine for dirt cheap, a computer or laptop, an adapter thing with USB ports and the USB-C, and a folding table from Walmart, a light from Tractor Supply, this folding chair also from Walmart, and your smartphone, literally. And boom, that's it. That's all you need to really set up a podcast for dirt cheap, believe it or not. So, like I said, if you want to start your own podcast, you can. You can also do it for dirt cheap. You could literally get a laptop for dirt cheap, a folding table for dirt cheap, that light for dirt cheap. All that thing behind me is cardboard, Gorilla Tape, and a garbage bag, and some thumbtacks. Because the picture that's behind it, I cannot show that. So you can get the folding table for dirt cheap, the folding chair that's 4th of July themed for dirt cheap. Believe it or not, everything you would actually need to start your own podcast, you can actually get right at Walmart for dirt cheap. Believe it or not. So just know that or you could technically start your podcast with everything all budget friendly, or literally nothing. That's how easy it is to start your own podcast, believe it or not. So now, aside from that, so now I'm going to talk about the usual things that I usually talk about on here. So for those of you who had watched the podcast, I think it was last week, again, I'm going to say this. I actually want to congratulate Anthony Constantino for running for the state of New York's 21st district. I just wanted to congratulate him for running for upstate New York's 21st district. I know I said that last week, but I'm going to say it again this week too. So anyway, like I said, if you want to start your own podcast for dirt cheap, you really don't need all that much equipment, to be honest with you. You can get everything fairly dirt cheap. or almost next to nothing. It just depends. So now I'm going to talk about the usual things I usually talk about on here. So let me see. So I'm sure a lot of you have already heard this from the other episodes of the podcast. The episodes, there's actually, with this episode now, this is episode 14, which is also being recorded in real time. So, anyway. So from the other episodes, you all probably already know by now that I actually, I have had, different places I had lived in different homes. I had quite the journey of paranormal experiences, and also had an alien encounter abduction years ago too, when I was a child, believe it or not. So, if you've been watching my podcast for a while now, you probably already know about that. So, now, you, like I said, if you know, you know. If you don't, you don't, which is fine. Yes, as of right now, this podcast is just a one-man show. For the time being, there was a couple episodes back, there was a guest or two on the podcast, but they were both silent guests. Each guest was both silent, so they would be considered silent guests, or guests, whatever. So, one was very blue, from what I remember. Anyway, so how would I say this? So, a while back, I had this idea for this. I really don't know how to put this, but it's also on YouTube. This little short, low budget, independent little short horror film thing that I made, that I actually directed, which it is on YouTube. It's actually called The Definitive Nightmare. It's about 51 to 52 seconds long. It's not very long, but that's just as far as I had got with that. For my idea, I actually had this idea to do this work on this horror movie film thing that's supposed to be a low budget independent horror film, but my idea was actually technically for a remake of a popular horror franchise film from the 1990s that is already in existence. But I had thought to myself, I had an idea for a remake with just a few slight changes. And I had that idea for, about a while now. And I have the whole script for it all on my phone. And no one's really been able to see it yet. And no one really knows much about that idea, but the idea, it's there. It was just a remake of a movie that I had seen a long time ago that I would like to have my version of it. Because there was a version of a similar title of a movie that was supposed to come out with a similar name. Well, this movie came out, but it did not come out underneath that name. So I had thought to myself, how about a remake of that with just a few slight changes? And I thought that would be cool to have those few slight changes, though. Which was the only difference. Anyway. Oh, I'm going to reveal something on this channel too. So anyway, I was outside one day and out in my yard, and all of a sudden, you're never going to believe this. I found the strangest thing out there. Something I had seen before, but I can't believe I actually had found this item out in my yard. I found this seashell just randomly suddenly appeared in my yard out of nowhere. And that's not the only one I found. I found another one too. It looks like this one, but it's a lot small. It's just a little smaller. It's like the only difference. But I said, that is so weird that I actually found these outside in my yard. Now, these do not belong outside in my yard. They're just there one day. And to this day, I have no clue why. But I figured I'd show them here on this live podcast on my channel here. Now, before you hit the subscribe button, please be sure to read the disclaimer up above. And if anyone is also interested in being on the podcast, please feel free to email the podcast. The email's there. You'll see it somewhere on my YouTube. So just email the podcast. It's gmail.com, obviously. So, yeah, like I said, just email the podcast. If you want to be on the podcast as a guest, it's actually not a problem. Or if there's a story you would like to share about anything that I have talked about in any of the episodes on my podcast, please feel free to email the podcast, and we'll see what we can do to get you on the podcast here. So now I think we should jump into the usual things that I talk about here. So, yeah, I had a lot of paranormal experiences from different places that I had lived in. And the majority of the places I moved out of, because majority of the places were rental properties at the time. And it just didn't work out with the way the landlords were. So that's majority of the reasons why I kept moving. But that's not all. There's more to it. This one place I lived when I was a child, we had just moved out of the apartment that we had lived in at the time. And a couple streets from there, an area that we know quite well, one day there was this older 1970s mobile home trailer for rent one time. And I was like, okay. So we found out it was for rent, so we move there. So we pull in the driveway one day, to move in there. And all of a sudden, the strangest thing happens. All of a sudden, so, we pull in the driveway, we got everything in the car. We walk in there, we turn the lights on. And for some reason, it's literally like still dark in there with the lights on. And we were like, okay. We didn't really pay much attention to, at the time, we really didn't pay much attention to it, because we were just so focused on the time of getting all our stuff out of the car to move into the home and then to unpack everything. So that's why we really didn't pay no mind to anything. And we were just like, okay. So, everything seemed normal there at first, until as I got a little older there, things started to change. This is when things really started being weird. Like, even with the lights on in there during the day, it would still often look dark. And a lot of time in that place, when you start walking down the hallway area to where the bathroom was, it would literally feel like you were being watched watched by something. And then, you look behind you, nothing's there. I was like, okay, interesting, but whatever. So then, all of a sudden, something else happens. Next thing you know, then it got to the point where, as I got older, I started getting older and started to need to use a computer at home for school and use a computer also at the school. So while I was learning that, I also had a home computer at the time to learn more stuff, So all of a sudden, as I got older, I'm, just like starting to use a computer, at that point in my life, because I was that old enough at the time. So all of a sudden, one night, I'm on the computer, and I happen to look behind me. I don't see nothing. And I said, boy, that was weird. I had that strange feeling that somebody was behind me watching me. So, I look behind me, no one's there. And I said, whoa, you have got to be kidding me. I was like, okay, that's strange. And, I really didn't pay no mind to it at first. Now, it didn't happen well, yes and no. It wouldn't happen during the day. It would only happen at night. So then, as I got a little older, living there still, this is when things got worse. So one night, in this old 1970s mobile home trailer, one night, all the pipes suddenly decide to burst and break. Oh my dear Lord. Talk about water everywhere. Let's just say the place was starting to fill up fast. Oh, that was a horrible night. A night I do not want to remember. So at one point while we were living there, the electrical panel box actually had to be updated with a newer one that was more modern at the time. Because it had an older one where the things on it were like these like circle knob looking things that were like plastic. They would just pop off. So eventually, it gets updated with a newer one where it has the flip breakers, So all of a sudden, every night in that bedroom in particular, every night around the same time, I would suddenly hear that thing make this weird noise. It would always it sounded like metal. It would often sound like someone had taken a quarter and literally just threw it towards the electrical panel box. It's like it would hit it and touch it, and then that's the noise it would make, and then all of a sudden power would just go off in the bedroom all the time. Now, I mind you, it wouldn't happen there if I wasn't alone. Now, if I was alone in that bedroom, that's when it would happen. And that happened all the time. So then, it happened more and more. It got more frequent. So then, another night in that bedroom, I had the bedroom door slightly opened because at one point I knew I was going to have to go to the bathroom. So I said the bedroom door was slightly open one night watching TV. And as soon as the commercial came on, I was going to go to the bathroom. So all of a sudden, I hear someone say, out of nowhere, "Hey, turn off the TV. I'm looking, I'm like, what the hell was that? I'm looking. Nobody's there. I was like, whoa, that was strange. So I thought that was strange. So I actually ended up going over to the bathroom, doing what I had to do, get back into the bedroom. I closed that bedroom door. Then all of a sudden, there the electrical panel goes, shutting off the power to the bedroom. I said to myself, oh, you've got to be kidding me. Then it also got to the point to where I actually decided enough was enough, to the point to where I actually ended up moving out of there as I got a little older. So at this time, I would say by the time we moved out of there, well, we had moved in there, I was about 7 or 8 years old at the time. And things just continued from there up until I was 14. So yeah, by the time I was 14, about 14 years old, we actually moved the hell up out of there. So yeah. So there about 7 or 8 years I had lived in that place and moved out of there because I had enough of everything that was going on there. Then it got to the point there to where I finally had enough of that electrical panel shutting off. So we packed everything, moved out of there. We ended up moving into... We ended up moving a little further out to another mobile home trailer, but this one was in a park. This one was in a trailer park that we ended up moving into at the time. And unfortunately, that was surrounded by awfully bad neighbors. Not all the neighbors in there were horribly bad. Some of them were just horrible, a few of them. So anyway, yeah, no, bad neighbors, that's horrible. So then we were living there, and that mobile home trailer was a 1970s trailer. The only difference was the one that we were living in, that we had all those paranormal experiences in, was an actual 1970s mobile home trailer too, but the one we ended up moving into as we were moving out of that one was also still a 1970s mobile home trailer, but the only difference was it was just a year newer. It was just 1 year newer than the other one. And it had the updated electrical panel already in it when it was built. We found that out. And now, I mind you, we did not have any creepy or paranormal experiences living in that mobile home trailer. Now, hell, only problem we had was bad neighbors. And that was like the only problem that we had there. But we moved in there at the time because we needed to find another place for rent, and it was available. So that's why we ended up moving in there. Now, I mean, should we have moved in there? Yes. Did we want to move? Yes. Were we going to move? Yes. Did we care at the time? No. Because we honestly, we were just glad to be out of there. Now, I mean, eventually we did move out of the one in that trailer park. We had lived there about, I want to say about 4 years. Yeah, 4 years we had lived in that trailer park. Or not. Yeah, about 4 or 5 years. And then we moved out. We had moved, actually, not far from there. Just over on one of the other streets. That was within distance of it. into another smaller mobile home trailer that was on a corner of like this one street. But this was a real older, a 1960s model. It was a lot smaller that we moved into. It was okay. It's just the only thing with it though. That had some weird experiences there too. So now living there, the difference was that living there, the only difference was that it was a lot smaller. It looked a little different from the others. And it was a 1960s structure, which was hard to believe that it was actually built in the 1960s. I said, wow, this thing was built in 1960? Yep. I said, wow, I did not know that. And no, I do not live there today, unfortunately. I actually live in a more modern one, in a double wide, actually. Well, that's besides the point. I actually live in a double wide that's a lot newer. In a double wide trailer that's a lot newer. And anyway, so this 1960s this older mobile home trailer did have some weird experiences too. Like every day around 5 days a week, every Monday through Friday around 1 or 2 in the afternoon, all of a sudden, the back door would slightly always come opened during the day. During the day, always. And I thought to myself, interesting. That's odd. And then, so when that would happen, so like I said, we did move out of there, because we lived there maybe about a year, and then we moved, we were there almost 2 years before we had moved out of there. We actually ended up moving into a rental house property that was like way bigger, that also had some weird paranormal experiences. So now the experiences with that place, it was this house that was up for rent, not far from there. So we moved in there, and it was built in 1965 from what we had found out. And one of the bedrooms in there had this weird open space, like into the floor. Oh, we don't know exactly why it was there, but this place, there were some very bizarre, strange, creepy, paranormal things that would happen there. So we were wondering if that bedroom there in particular, that floor in that bedroom in the one spot, was actually the portal. We wondered if it was an open portal to something. We don't know for sure, but we're pretty sure that it was. We had lived there, I want to say, maybe 3 or 4 years until we moved out of there, but the landlord there was very bad. He was watching everything we would do. Like, he actually had hidden cameras set up in there. He knew when we'd leave. He knew when we were home. Oh, yeah. He knew. Like, he knew, like, when friends of mine would stop by, what we were talking about. Oh, yeah. He knew. I said to myself, really? So he would literally drive by at random times. So one day, he didn't know I was home. Aha. So he didn't think I was there. So I'm there one day, it's summertime at the time. And, it was really hot out that day. So I was like, you know what? I'm not going to go outside because it's way too hot. It was like 101 out that day. He decides to pull in the driveway. I hear a car pull in. I, look out the window to see who it was. He pulls in. He's just sitting there looking around the yard. I said, oh, you've got to be kidding me. So, I called my family members. I'm like, hey, on my phone, I'm like, hey, landlord was just here. Like, he just sat out in the driveway looking around. I don't know why. That was weird. He was one of those slumlord landlords, which I'm sure a lot of you have had experiences and problems with that. So now, I mind you, he was one of them. So, and I was like, that's so weird. Why was he there? Why he was there? He literally sat there and thought that I should be outside in 101 temperature outside in the summer instead of being inside. Well, I was inside because the air conditioner was on and it was a lot cooler. I'm not going to go outside and have a fucking heat stroke or something, or fucking die out in the goddamn hot sun. He was that stupid. Literally. Yes, he was a moron. He was also a slumlord landlord. You name it. Yeah. So we moved out of there, and thank God we did. That's all I got to say. Then we moved into an older 1970s to 1980s double wide trailer at the time, over on the other side of town, actually. And eventually, what we did was we lived there, I want to say, about a year. Yeah, about a year. And then actually, no. It was 1 year and 3 months we had lived there. And that was also in a park, in another trailer park. We weren't going to, but it was available, so we hopped on it. And then we had lived there up until we ended up purchasing and buying our 2-story house that we also had lived in at the time, at one time in our lives. We lived there, I want to say, we lived there a few years. And then we sold that house and bought the place that we're in now. And, it was time we bought a place because, we were just tired of renting and dealing with slumlord landlords, So here's a good reason of why, we decided just to move and actually buy a place instead of renting one again. I swear we would never, ever go back to renting ever again due to slumlord landlords. Right there, the number one issue. It's right there. Yes, I mind you, there are still some good ones out there, but there's also still some bad ones out there too, just to let you know. So now, anyway, another thing here, what I'm going to talk about. So now, when I was in high school, the teacher, this woman, she wanted us to do this assignment one day. So we're like, okay, well, what is it? So she tells us, and she's like, oh, I want you to fill out this paper for the assignment, something about something you may or may not like to do at some point in your life or whatever. I was like, okay, hey, that sounds cool. Or so I thought. So I fill it out. I put on there someday, I would maybe like to make, like low budget horror film, a low budget independent horror films, like some of the biggest creators in the industry as of today. Some of the biggest names. Because at one time they did, before they had big production movie films that they have nowadays with their name. So I said something like that. And she had nerve to tell me, that's not a real career. You'll never amount to anything by doing that. And she's like, do you have any equipment for that? I said, no, I do not. And two, I didn't say I was going to do that right away. I said, maybe someday I may do that. I never said for sure. She had nerve to fucking humiliate me. I thought to myself, wow, lady, you're a real bitch. That's what I thought of her at the time. So, that's one of the other reasons why I cannot stand her to this day. Yeah. Yeah, she made my life a living hell, that woman. She was horrible to me. Oh, now, the assistant teacher wasn't much better. No, she wasn't. That's for sure. She also had nerve to irritate me during math class all the time. So one day, she irritates me during math class. She did not like when I turned around and snapped at her. Yeah, I snapped at her because I was tired of her bullshit, always being a bitch to me. So I turned around and looked at her. I said something not very pleasant. She just looked at me. And she goes, well, I'm going to go get the assistant principal. I said, go ahead. I ain't afraid. If that's what you think, I'm not. She goes and gets him. And mind you, his nasty ass walks in. I just looked at him. I'm sitting right in front of the main teacher. I'm sitting there. I just looked at both of them and I was like, So he walks in. He's like, oh, so what's the problem here? I said, a problem? Oh, this is the first I've heard of this. I do not see a problem here. I said, so I don't know what the problem is. I said, actually, yeah, I got one. Here's the problem. I said, have you ever thought that maybe it's the help that you hired around here that may be the problem? I said, did you ever think of that? I said, you know what? Take your ugly, nasty ass back to your office and go sit down. He walked out. But before he walks out, he's just looking at me. I just looked at him. I was like, go back to your office now. So then she walks back in a while later. And she goes, didn't the assistant principal come in? I go, oh, yeah. As a matter of fact, he did. He thought there was a slight little problem. But I reassured him that there was not a problem here. I said, but except I have one. I said, did you ever think that maybe you as the help hired around here may be the problem? I also told him to walk his nasty, ugly ass back to his office and sit down. She just looked at me and she didn't say one word. I looked at her. I said, open your mouth and say a word. I dare you. She didn't say shit. At that point, she didn't know what to say to me. That's for sure. Now, the teacher's aide lady, she was nice. She was the nicest one out of the other two. But I mind you, the teacher and the teacher's assistant loved to talk about the librarian lady. She was nice too. But a lot of people thought she was mean. She wasn't mean. She was just being strict. She just had to be strict. That's the only difference. And also, she wasn't mean. It's just I know she had been in that job for a long time. I'm sure she's had to deal with a lot of things in that job. And I understood and knew exactly like where she was coming from. Me and her, we got along great. Yeah, I mean, yes, I'll admit this. You know, she did seem a little scary at first. But then I was like, you know what? She's not so bad. People are just looking at me, shaking their head, saying, wow, really? I said, okay, first of all, let me reassure all of you something. She's been in this job for a very long time. I'm sure she's had to deal with a lot of very ridiculous things. So you know what? Whether she's being strict or you think she may be a little scary at first, or maybe she's just being a certain way to you, get to know her. And then you'll see she's not that bad. But the teacher and the assistant teacher love to talk about how horrible she was. I said to myself, wow, you both got to be kidding me. And then I said to myself, wow, only if this librarian lady knew exactly all the stuff that you two would constantly say about her. Huh, wow. I just said to myself, you're just lucky that I don't tell her all this. But I said, you know what? I'm going to be fair by not doing that. So, like I said, I chose not to do just that. And now, the other teacher that was nice was the computer teachers. They were nice. Even the music teacher, she was nice too. All the other teachers, except one other one. There were 3 not nice ones. The rest of them were all nice. So, I do not know why those 3 chose to be horrible. Because they're all the same. That's why. And the sad part is, these people honestly are hired at these jobs when they're horrible. And I know this woman was also living a double life. The main teacher lady. Oh yeah, so was her husband. Actually, so were both of her husbands. Her first husband was living a double life. So was her second one. Oh yeah, she seems to forget about that, which everybody knew about. Literally. Now, she was this type of teacher. She would also talk about her students in front of other students all the time. Oh, I know that bitch would often talk about me. Oh, yeah. Oh, I knew. That's all. It's not important how I knew, actually, but I just knew. And then, like I said, she would do it over and over. Funny little story. One time, she broke her leg. I sat there and had, like, no sympathy. But I acted like I had the sympathy for her, even though in reality I didn't. So I said to a friend of mine at the time in school, I said to my friend one day, I said, now that our teacher is out with a broken leg for a while, I said, I guarantee she won't be out for very long. I said, that'll be shortly lived, you know. My friend looks at me, she goes, what do you mean it'll be shortly lived? I said, you'll see. You'll see. You'll see. She won't be out for very long. Watch it be shortly lived. Oh, sure enough, it was shortly lived. Just exactly like and how I said. That's for sure. Oh, yeah. But then again, she was being horrible to another student during this issue when it happened about her leg. So I don't know the full story exactly of what else had happened with that, but I'm pretty sure I have a version of it of what actually had occurred and happened. Whether I can prove it or not, I'm pretty sure that's what happened. Anyway, so then, around the time when I was still in high school, one of my relatives was very sick and getting ready to pass away, who did end up passing away, and was getting special medical care at the time because of their illness and their condition of passing. So the relative had passed, and I found out by a phone call. And so I stayed home, dealing with all that, going through it at the time when I had first found out of the condition of the relative in the first place. This teacher was constantly be horrible to me till she found out what was going on. So one day I walked in the room early enough. I went talked to the teacher's aide, and I'm like, you're going to have to say something to this main teacher lady because she won't believe me. So I told her what was going on, and I told her how the teacher was always being horrible to me. So then it got to the point to where as soon as the teacher walked in, the teacher's aide, before she walked in, she goes, I'll handle it. I said, okay, thank you. Oh, she went and said something to her. I don't know what was said, but all I can tell you is she wanted to suddenly talk to me after, like just me and the teacher. So she came to me, asked me what was going on. I told her, and she kind of looked horrified almost. I said, but yeah, the way I'm treated by you and the other one. She went, oh, okay. I said, yeah, that may have something to do with it. So then things were, how would I say this? Things changed after that for a couple days, about maybe 2 days tops. And then it went right back to the old behaviors. But yet, I'm the one that's the asshole in all this. No. Correction. I am not the asshole during all this. No. I'm not the bad guy. That teacher was the one who was the bad guy. Them two women were the bad girls of this. Needless to say. But anyway, I'm going to hop off here now, and I will see you all in the next episode. Now, before I go, I want majority of you all to know that this podcast would not be possible without all of you as viewers and subscribers. Also, be sure to subscribe to my channel. Be sure to like the video, comment, share, and subscribe. Hit that red notification bell button. That way you'll be notified for videos. You can have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. I would suggest all of them, but I'm going to hop off here, and just know you're all appreciated. God bless you all, and I will see you all. I love having all of you on the channel, and I will see you all in the next episode of the podcast. Bye.